The house had never been this quiet before, not even during storms when the wind rattled the windows. This silence felt different, heavy, almost like it was watching me. And then, out of nowhere, I heard my own son's voice, low, cutting, cruel. He said the words I thought I'd never hear from him. "Mom, my mother-in-law is better than you." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. I wasn't prepared for the sting. Those words didn't just bruise me. They carved straight into the deepest part of my chest. I raised this boy, carried him through sickness, sat awake through his nightmares, worked extra shifts so he wouldn't go to bed hungry, and now he was standing in my kitchen, eyes hard, voice sharp, comparing me to another woman, his wife's mother. At first, I thought maybe he was joking. Maybe it was just an awkward attempt at humor. So I gave him a weak smile and asked, "What do you mean by that?" He didn't laugh. He didn't explain. He just doubled down. "She listens. She respects me. She knows how to treat people. You don't." The room seemed to tilt under my feet. My son, the boy who once clung to my arm in the grocery store, who used to slip his small hand into mine as we crossed the street, was now looking at me like I was less than, like I was the burden in his life. His wife, Emily, was standing right behind him, arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin, smug line. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her silence screamed everything. She agreed. For weeks, I noticed small shifts. My son visits less, calls getting shorter, dinners filled with strained silences. I thought it was just marriage adjusting to him, the natural pull of a new life. But now I wondered if it was more than that. If he'd been slipping away, step by step, until I was no longer his safe place, no longer his anchor. I tried to steady my voice, but it cracked anyway. "I'm your mother. I've been there for you every day of your life." He didn't even flinch. And maybe that's the problem. You think being there is enough. But you never understood me. Those words echoed through the kitchen, bouncing off the walls, lodging themselves into my ears. Never understood him. My God, I tried. I tried harder than anyone else ever could. But before I could answer, Emily reached forward, touching his arm as if to reel him back toward her. Her mother's shadow stretched long between us, longer than I ever imagined it could. That night I sat alone in the dark after they left. The house felt emptier than ever. It wasn't just the silence, it was the feeling of absence, like a door had slammed shut between me and the boy I thought I knew. And yet, as much as it hurt, I couldn't shake something gnawing at the back of my mind. Something wasn't adding up. My son had never spoken like that before. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't ungrateful. Something about his words, his tone, felt almost rehearsed, like someone else's script was spilling from his mouth. The suspicion clawed at me in the days that followed. Emily called rarely. When she did, her voice dripped with a politeness too sweet, too sharp, like sugar-masking poison. And when her mother came up in conversation, my son's face lit up in ways I hadn't seen in months. He laughed. He softened, as if that woman had become the sun in his universe, and I was just a shadow fading at the edges. I told myself I'd stay calm. I'd wait. But patience is thin when your child is slipping through your fingers. I didn't know then that the darkest proof of all was about to come. Proof that the bond between a mother and son can be broken, but sometimes only through something much more sinister than neglect. Because the night the house went dark, I heard his voice break. And what he confessed in the shadows changed everything I thought I knew. The night the house went dark, it didn't feel like an accident. The storm outside wasn't strong enough to knock out power, yet all at once, every lamp, every hum of the refrigerator, every soft buzz of the ceiling fan stopped. The silence pressed down hard, like the house itself was holding its breath. I lit a candle, the only source of light I could find. Its flame wavered against the kitchen wall, throwing tall, crooked shadows. My heart pounded louder than the tick of the clock, and then I heard it. A voice, my son's voice. Low, shaky. Not the cruel, defiant tone he used days earlier, but something raw, something broke. "Mom, I didn't mean what I said." The words floated from the darkness like a whisper carried on the wind. My throat tightened. I looked around, candles trembling in my hand, but I couldn't see him. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Where are you?" I called out. The floor creaked from the living room. I stepped slowly, brushing my bare feet against the cold wood. My pulse quickened with every step. He was here, in the house. But why? And why did his voice sound so different, so desperate? When I reached the doorway, the candle's glow stretched only far enough to show a figure sitting on the couch. My son. His head hung low, his shoulders slumped. He looked like a boy again, not the grown man who had cut me with his words. "Mom," he said again, his voice cracking. "I don't know what's happening to me." The air felt heavier with each word. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice soft but firm. He looked up, and the flicker of the flame caught his eyes. They were red, tired, and hollow. "She tells me things about you. And when I hear her voice, it's like my own thoughts don't matter. I start believing in her, even when I don't want to. A chill spread down my spine. Emily's mother, the woman he praised, the woman he claimed was better than me. "What kinds of things?" I pressed. He swallowed hard. "That you held me back, that you were overprotective, that you're selfish, jealous of her, jealous of Emily. She says you're toxic, and sometimes I believe it. I can't help it." His hands gripped his head as if trying to squeeze the thoughts out. "But deep down, I know it's not true. I know you loved me. You gave me everything. So why do I feel like her words own me?" The room seemed to shrink around us. His confession was like ice water pouring down my back. Someone was planting poison in his mind, not just little doubts, but full narratives. Narratives designed to cut the bond between us. "Has she said anything else?" I asked, my stomach twisting. He hesitated, then leaned forward, lowering his voice as though the shadows might be listening. "She says you're dangerous. That if I keep coming here, something bad will happen. And sometimes I think I hear her voice when she's not even around, like she's inside my head." The candle sputtered, nearly going out. A thin line of wax dripped down onto my hand, burning my skin, but I barely felt it. The fear in his voice was sharper than any pain. I reached for him, wanting to pull him close, to shield him from whatever grip this woman had on him. But before I could touch him, the power suddenly surged back on. The lights blazed, flooding the room with a harsh white glow, and just like that, he was gone. The couch was empty. No indentation in the cushions, no sound of footsteps leaving. Nothing. My heart slammed in my chest. Had he even been here? Had I imagined it? The air still carried the echo of his voice, but the room was bare. I stood frozen, the candle still trembling in my hand, though I no longer needed its light. If that was a dream, it felt too real. If it was real, then how had he vanished? And most important of all, did I still hear the faintest trace of his words lingering in my ears? I don't know what's happening to me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with every light on, staring at the couch, waiting for the shadows to return. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Emily's mother wasn't just winning my son's loyalty, she was taking hold of his mind, and if I didn't stop her soon, I might lose him forever. The next morning, I convinced myself it must have been a dream, a hallucination born from exhaustion and grief. But when I walked into the living room, something stopped me cold. The cushion on the couch, the same one where I had seen my son, was dented, sunken in, like someone had been sitting there all night. My skin prickled. Dreams don't leave behind evidence. All day at work, I couldn't focus. My thoughts circled back to his voice, his eyes, his broken words. She says you're dangerous. She says you're toxic. Every syllable echoed like a knife dragging across stone. That evening, I drove to my son's house. I needed answers. Emily answered the door with that same too-sweet smile, but her eyes betrayed her annoyance. "Oh, hi," she said flatly. "We weren't expecting you." "I need to see him," I told her. My voice was steadier than I felt. She stepped aside reluctantly, and there he was, my son, standing in the living room. But this time, his face was cold again, his posture stiff, his tone clipped. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I stared at him, searching for the boy who had broken down in my darkened living room. But he wasn't there. He was armored again, his voice dripping with contempt. "Didn't we already talk about this? You can't just come barging into my life." Emily leaned against the wall, arms folded, smirking as though she had already won. "I need to know," I said, forcing myself to hold his gaze. "Do you remember coming to see me last night?" He blinked. Confusion flickered across his face, but only for a second. Then his jaw tightened. "I didn't go anywhere. I was here all night. Ask Emily." My stomach sank. He wasn't lying. At least he believed he wasn't. Which meant either he didn't remember, or something far more chilling was happening. Emily's voice cut in, sharp as a blade. "You see? This is what I mean. She twists things. She makes up stories to get attention. She's toxic, just like my mom said." I froze. Those words, toxic, just like my mom said, weren't just Emily's opinion. They were a script, the same poison I'd heard from my son's mouth. I left before my anger could boil over, but as I drove home, the unease twisted tighter in my chest. Emily's mother wasn't just planting doubts, she was orchestrating something deeper, something I couldn't yet name. That night, I couldn't sleep again. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the lights in my house flickered and died. Not the neighborhood, not the block, just my house. And then, like clockwork, his voice returned. "Mom." I sat up straight in bed, my breath caught in my throat. This time, he wasn't in the living room. He was standing at the foot of my bed. His figure was faint in the moonlight, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. "I don't have control anymore," he whispered. "She makes me say things. Makes me believe in things. I don't even know which thoughts are mine." His voice cracked. "Mom, I think she wants to erase you from me completely." The fear in his tone pierced me, but before I could answer, his form flickered, like a weak signal on a broken TV, and vanished. The room went dark again. When the power surged back on, I was alone. The next morning, I called Emily's mother. I don't know what I expected. An argument, a denial, maybe even laughter. But what I heard chilled me to the bone. Her voice was smooth, almost comforting, like honey poured over glass. "You should stop resisting, dear. He's mine now. You had your years with him. It's my turn." My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. "What are you doing to him?" I demanded. She chuckled. "Not doing, darling. Becoming. I'm becoming the mother he needs." The line went dead. My heart hammered as the truth settled in. This wasn't just manipulation, this was possession, an invasion. She wasn't trying to win his loyalty. She was trying to overwrite me, piece by piece, until I no longer existed in his mind. And worst of all, my son seemed powerless to stop it. That night, as I sat in my living room, I realized I had two choices: surrender and lose him forever, or fight back against something I didn't fully understand. And I wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. I didn't sleep. Not because I couldn't, but because I was too afraid of what might come crawling out of the dark when my eyes closed. The words Emily's mother spoke over the phone kept circling in my mind. "I'm becoming the mother he needs." That wasn't just manipulation. That was a declaration of war. By morning, my decision was clear. If I wanted to save my son, I needed to know exactly what I was up against. So I started digging. I searched for public records, old newspapers, anything with her name. Her past wasn't spotless. There were whispers about her first marriage, how it collapsed under strange circumstances. Neighbors claimed her husband became a different man before he left, distant and bitter toward his own family. Then a second marriage, and the same thing happened. A husband who suddenly cut ties with his relatives until he filed for divorce, leaving everything behind. It wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern. Everywhere she went, she hollowed out the men in her life, turning them against the people who loved them. But how? I couldn't answer that yet. What I did know was that she had her claws in my son now, and if I didn't act soon, she'd rip him away from me completely. That evening, I drove to their house again. I didn't announce myself this time. I parked down the street and waited. Through the living room window, I saw my son, Emily, and her mother. They were sitting together, the glow of the TV flashing across their faces. But it wasn't the TV that caught my attention. It was her. Emily's mother sat unnervingly close to my son, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. He wasn't looking at the screen. He wasn't looking at anyone. He stared straight ahead, eyes glazed, as if he wasn't even present. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my hands ached. That wasn't the boy I raised. That was a puppet, strings pulled tight by someone else. I was still watching when something unexpected happened. The lights inside flickered, just like they had in my house. My son flinched, his lips moving silently like he was arguing with someone only he could hear. Emily's mother leaned closer, her lips near his ear, whispering words I couldn't make out. But whatever she said, it made his face pale. He shook his head slowly, like he wanted to resist, but then his body went limp again, as if surrendering. I couldn't sit there anymore. I marched to the front door and pounded. Hard. Emily opened it, her face stiff with irritation. "You can't just show up here whenever you feel like it." "Where's my son?" I demanded. Before she could answer, he appeared in the hallway. But his eyes, God, his eyes weren't his own. They were distant, hollow, almost glassy. "You need to go, Mom," he said flatly. "This isn't your place anymore." My chest tightened. "Please, listen to yourself. This isn't you talking." Emily's mother stepped into view then, her presence filling the room like a shadow swallowing light. She smiled at me, calm, confident, like she had already won. "You should let him grow, dear," she said softly. "You've kept him too close for too long. He doesn't belong to you now. He belongs to us." Her words weren't loud, but they carried a strange weight that pressed against my skull. For a moment, I felt my own knees weaken, like she was reaching inside me, too. I grabbed the door frame to steady myself. "Get out," my son repeated. His voice was monotone, robotic. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I will not lose you," I whispered, my voice trembling. But I left, not because I wanted to, but because I knew if I stayed, she'd crush me right there on the spot. Back home, I locked every door and window, though I knew locks meant nothing against whatever power she had. That night, I didn't wait for the house to go dark. I turned off every light myself, sat in silence, and whispered into the shadows. "If you can hear me, son, fight her. Please fight her." Hours passed. Just when I thought nothing would happen, the temperature in the room dropped. My breath came out in visible clouds, and then his voice returned. "Mom, she's stronger than me. She's inside me, but there's something you don't know." The voice trembled, cracked, barely holding together. "She doesn't just want me. She wants you too." The candle I had lit blew out without warning, and the darkness swallowed everything. The moment my son's voice faded, the silence inside my home became unbearable. I sat frozen in the dark, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. She doesn't just want me. She wants you too. Those words repeated in my head until they became a drumbeat of terror. Why me? What could she possibly want from me? And then the answer struck like lightning. This wasn't about taking my son away. It was about replacing me. Erasing me from his memory, his life, his very soul. And once I was gone, she would take my place completely. I refused to let that happen. The next morning, I drove to a small church on the edge of town. I hadn't been inside a church in years, but desperation drives you places you never expect. The pastor there, an older man with kind but weary eyes, listened quietly as I poured everything out. He didn't laugh. He didn't call me crazy. He just nodded, like he had heard something like this before. "You're not fighting just a woman," he said softly. "You're fighting something that uses her. Something old. Something that feeds on breaking bonds." I swallowed hard. How do I stop it? He handed me a small silver cross and a worn leather Bible. Faith and courage. She can't take what you refuse to surrender. That night, I prepared myself. I placed the cross on my coffee table, opened the Bible, and waited. Sure enough, at 2:17 a.m., the lights in my house flickered, and the air turned ice cold. This time, I wasn't afraid. "Show yourself," I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. And she did. Not my son. Emily's mother stood in the corner of my living room, though I hadn't heard a door open. Her presence filled the space like poison seeping through the air. "You're persistent," she said smoothly. "But persistence won't save you." "Stay away from my son," I shot back. She smiled, tilting her head. "I don't want to hurt him. I want to free him. From you. From your chains. Haven't you noticed? He resents you. Deep down, he always has." I just gave that resentment a voice. I gripped the cross in my hand until my knuckles turned white. "You're lying." I raised him with love. "Love?" Her voice dripped with mockery. "You smothered him, controlled him. You made him need you so badly he could never breathe. That's not love, dear. That's prison." For a moment, her words sliced into me. Was it true? Had I held him too tightly, suffocating him with my fears and my overprotection? Doubt crept in like a crack in a window, letting in the cold. But then I remembered his broken voice in the dark, confessing that he knew I loved him, that he was fighting her words. That was the truth, my truth. I raised the cross. You can twist the story, but you can't rewrite it. I am his mother, and nothing you do will change that. For the first time, her smile faltered. The shadows in the room grew longer, swirling around her like smoke. She hissed, a sound that didn't belong to any human throat. "He will forget you. He already is." And then I heard him, my son's voice, faint but present. "Mom, don't let her win." That was enough. I stepped forward, holding the cross high, my voice breaking but strong. "You will not take him. You will not take me. In the name of everything good, you are not welcome here." The lights blazed suddenly, flooding the room with brightness. She shrieked, covering her face, and in an instant she was gone. The air warmed, the shadows retreated, and the silence finally lifted. I collapsed to the floor, shaking, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know if it was over. Not completely. But for the first time in weeks, the house felt like mine again. The next morning, my son called. His voice was clearer, lighter, like the fog had lifted from his mind. "Mom," he said softly, "I don't know why I've been so cold to you." I'm sorry I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. Some truths are too heavy to carry until the time is right. But as I hung up the phone, one thought lingered. Battles like this don't end in a single night. They come back in whispers, in doubts, in the quiet moments when you least expect them. I won this round. I held on to my son. But deep down, I knew she wasn't gone forever. And the next time she came, she wouldn't just come for him. She'd come for both of us.